Hello guys, in this video we're going to talk about logging and tracing in microservices ecosystem. How are we going to trace and log all these microservices when we have like service 1 calling service 2, service 2 calling service 7, service 7 calling service 4? How do you keep track of all this information, and within those bunch of calls, if one service is not responding correctly or properly, how do you know? So that's what we're going to talk about today. So obviously it's a little complex than just having one monolithic application and just logging it. How we do this in microservices? We use tools, right tools for the right job. So we're going to talk about Spring Cloud Sleuth and Zipkin. What is Spring Cloud Sleuth? It's a logging and a distributed tracing platform. It gives us two main things. One is a trace ID and other is a span ID. So trace ID is kind of like a correlation ID across multiple service invocations that are within one call. So what I mean by that is, if you call service A and it calls service B calls service C calls service D, and so on and so forth, all of them are going to have same trace ID. So you can correlate the trace ID with a root service call, right? And the span ID is actually a little bit different. Span ID is between services. So when service A calls service B, that's one span. When service B calls service C, that's the second span, and so on and so forth. So the Spring Sleuth, out of the box, it gives you those two. It does a lot of additional stuff, but I find those two are the main components of this. So Zipkin. So what is Zipkin? Zipkin is a distributed tracing platform. It allows you basically to trace transactions across multiple service calls. It's similar to Sleuth to some extent, but it also gives you actually visualization and the dependencies that exist between services by giving you information by spans and services. So I'll show you in a minute how that works. Pretty cool thing. So the cool thing also is you can send information to Zipkin by either HTTP, or you can stream by Kafka, or you can send messages by RabbitMQ. So default is HTTP, and it as a data store it supports MySQL, Cassandra, Elasticsearch. I'm not sure about Splunk, maybe. So all those things, right? So what are the main patterns for logging and tracing in microservices? So I've seen three main patterns, right? Depending on the complexity of the ecosystem, what you have in the different places. So the first one is use Sleuth by itself. So all you have to do is basically add the dependencies and do the configuration. So you do that for each microservices. So you get the trace ID and span ID by default, right? The second one is you do this configuration. You do the first step, and then you actually do the aggregation, right? And then aggregation, you can do analysis on it later. So Zipkin, you can use Zipkin server UI to visualize and see what's going on. That's the second option. Third option is similar to the second option. The only thing you do in the middle, you add like either streaming, or you add like with Kafka or RabbitMQ. That's a little bit more involved. So you don't lose any information if Zipkin server goes down. So those are the three main patterns logging. So I'll show you everything in code in a minute. So the way I set this up is service A calls service B and service B calls service C. So all the calls are via Zool service gateway, and of course Eureka. Okay. All right, let's dig into the code and see what's going on. All right, I want to show you one of my microservices. As I said, I have 3 microservices, A, B, and C. We'll take a look at one of them because the changes are the same for each of those. So the first thing you have to do is add required dependencies. So these are the 2 required dependencies, right? One is a Spring Cloud Starter Sleuth, and one is if you want to send the information to Zipkin, Cloud Starter Zipkin. Once you add it, you can choose not to add this. You can just add this. You get some information, as you can see here. But I think if you add both, you get more easier way of looking at things. And once you add these dependencies, you go to your application YAML, you add these 2 things. Basically, you say, hey, Zipkin is running here. This is the URL, base URL. Zipkin by default uses 9411. So once you have that, you're all good to go. That's all you need to do. So what I want to show you is, so this is I'm calling here service A, which calls service B and service C. So this is the response you get back. This is from service B, and for that I concatenate this response from service C. I'll show you how that works. So what I'm doing is I'm calling this endpoint, and that goes to this endpoint. This calls service C, and it concatenates the response and sends it back. But that's not the main thing I want to show you. I just want to show you the flow. So what I wanted to show you is actually go to service A. So once you add that, all the pieces we talked about, this is the information you get. So it has 4 pieces of information, right? The first one is actual service name. The second one is the trace ID, which I was talking about before, which is common across all the services for a single request. And this is the span ID, which is different between each service. Service A to B has one span ID, B to C has a different span ID. And the true or false, it's a flag saying whether it's sending information to Zipkin or not. So if you look at this trace ID, it has to be same. Across one call involving multiple microservices, right? So look at this is a DA7031. Let's go to service B. DA7331BE. So as you can see, the trace ID is same, but if you notice, if you look at the span ID, it's going to be different. In this case, it's 50402. In this case, this is C46CB, etc. So those are the 2 things. Those are the main things actually I want you to take away from this video, right? So once you have that, let's go to Zipkin UI. So this is how it looks like. As I said, it's at 9411. You can query by different services, service A, B, C, and you can also query by span name. It also gives you query by whatever the duration you want to know. You want to know information from last 1 hour or 6 hours, whatever, right? Okay, so it's telling us the call we just made here. This has 9 spans. So if you look at this, this is the time. Took so long. And service A has 2 spans, service Zul Gateway has 4 spans, service B has 2 spans, and service C has 1 span. It all makes sense because the first time you call service A, that's 1 span, it goes to service B, that's 1 span for service B, and it goes to service C, and when it comes back, that's the 2nd span for service B, and when service B comes back to service A, that's the 2nd span for service A. The reason Zul Gateway has 4 is because all of these calls are going through Zul. So if you want to know more information, you click on the spans, then you'll know how long this call took, from a Zool gateway's perspective. It took 28 milliseconds, and then it gives you services here. It gives you the depth, a lot of other information. So if you want to know more about this, you can click on it, and it gives you for Zool gateway start times, end times, rest endpoints, client addresses, and also the HTTP method and stuff like that. So this kind of makes it easy for us to visualize what's going on within our microservices. The one thing I forgot to mention though, when we looked at this slide here, I talked about actually aggregating. So for aggregating, the tools generally are used. You can use Elasticsearch. You can use Kibana, Splunk, Papertrail, Cassandra. Seen all of these. So that's one thing I wanted to mention. So I'm gonna add all the links to the Zipkin and also Spring Sleuth and all the related information in the description below, guys. I hope you find this useful. If you like it, give me a thumbs up. Thank you. Bye.